That's it, Summer Murray, who responded to my post on the Grand Marais community page at Facebook.
All right, Steve, we're live.
So you want to start?
Yep.
Okay. By the way, Matt, I'm the acting chairperson. I was vice chair, and the chair left town, or at least left the program, and left me there. And we decided to wait to elect a new chair until we had a more complete complement.
Right.
And I suppose we'll have a policy decision today as to whether we're complete enough. But in all events, the first item is the approval of the agenda, which I believe you all got in the email. I take it we're not going to have a golf report today, but in March, we're going to do some discussions about golf carts and whatever else.
That's right. And so
Okay.
I would just add that under the additions to the agenda, we'll use the old business and the new business tags, but we'll have CJ Fernandez presenting his latest plans for the landing under old business. And then we'll have, I have a special event application from Stone Harbor Wilderness for
That's
their.
the so-called community connection under
That's
old
right.
business.
The
Okay.
landing, we'll get an update from CJ on. He'll be joining us remotely
Will
and
he
then-
be joining us here or
on
by-
the screen.
remotely? Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be old business. New business, I have an application from Jack Stone, Stone Harbor Wilderness for his water festival in July.
Oh, yeah.
That's Stone Harbor.
Yeah, we'll review that under new business.
Great.
Okay, are there any other requests or suggestions about changing the agenda?
Move approval with additions.
I'm sorry,
Move approval with the additions.
and there's a second,
I'll second it since I'm the only other one.
his first official act.
I love it.
And do I hear any objection? If there's no objection, the agenda is approved. Turning next to the minutes.
Yeah, so as you may recall, we did not meet in January. We didn't have a quorum. So these were from December of 2021.
Right,
I know you guys, you had them for review in January and
yeah.
certainly can look at them again.
Bob and I had a chance to look at the minutes. Matthew, have you had a chance to
I did.
study them as much as you want?
Yep.
The only thing I would say is that I think I said something during the meeting, and I would like to add this to the minutes, about how the cost of batteries, I had replaced them in my cart some years ago for $800. And so maybe we could add a sentence there at the, after the 2,000 per cart, you could add a sentence that says Aldrich did a little bit of internet research and found that they said that costs for replacement batteries for electric golf carts range from $800 to $1,500. Commonly, occasionally in rare models, is how much is 2,000?
Sure, you
And,
can add that, Steve.
That's the end of the addition I'd like to request. Is there anything else that anybody wants to suggest by way of amendment or correction to the minutes?
Move approval as amended.
Seconded.
Any objection? So ordered. All right. Our next item of business is a presentation on the rehabilitation of the Niji fishing tug, which sits near the harbor in Rec Park. We all received some printed information, including pictures, and the last picture of which, or maybe I guess the next to the last, the second to the last page shows the Niji stored underneath a roof next to the old fishing shack, as I understand it, near the end of the marina in the harbor. And we have with us today a guest to talk about it. There's also a proposed memorandum of understanding between the Cook County Historical Society and the City of Grand Marais Park Board, which we will get to after we have the presentation. And it's somebody named Brad, is it Eggy?
Dwayne Agee.
But he left the meeting just a second ago, I'm not
He-
sure why, he didn't say anything. He was here.
I saw him. He'll be back. It looks like Brian Tofty's also there. Is that Captain?
Caption is
Caption?
his laptop.
Oh, so we are needing Dwayne.
Yeah.
The tug that doesn't sail has a captain. All right.
And that's caption, not captain.
It's printed pretty small up there, so you get a pass on that
Brian,
one.
he said he was a charter captain.
Maybe while we're waiting for him, we could
I
take a
can
look
give
at
you
the
some
parks.
background here, yeah. So I
Look
met
at the
with,
Parks report.
well, or I'll just talk about this Niji project in general, because
Okay.
I'm quite familiar with it. Brian Tofty, Bjorn Tofty, and Dwayne Eggy and I all met last week in my offices. They're on this, they're with the Cook County Historical Society. Brian, I believe, is the vice chair. Dwayne is on the Niji subcommittee. And Bjorn Tofty is a boat builder, wooden boat worker. And the three of them are tasked with the restoration, the preservation, and really at this stage, the stabilization of the Niji, this old classic fishing tug that, as you see, I sent out the sort of the history of it. It's the only fishing tug that was built in Grand Marais in the 1930s, early or to mid 1930s, by the Scott family. And it was brought back to the park after an illustrious tour of the lakes. Throughout its career, it was used here in town as well as across the bay. But they reclaimed it. The Cook County Historical Society got it back in 2003 and did some restoration efforts and included it in this fishing museum exhibit down at the rec park. Now, the fishing museum itself is a recreated, it was built to look old, but the Niji is the real deal. It's a approaching 100-year-old vessel. And it has sat outside under just a, shed roof. And that outdoor weathering has been not kind to it. Even though they've kept it up in paint and sort of cosmetics, it's suffering from rot, from dry rot, and real damage to the ribs, to the structure to the bones of the boat, as it were. And in an effort to preserve it for more time, the Historical Society would like to move it and put it in an indoor storage facility.
Into where?
A stored facility that's indoor space.
Oh, where is that?
I believe speculation is across the street here in the Bill Valley.
At the Valley?
Yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere in the
okay.
holdings between the two. We saw a gravel pad go in there last fall, and we believe they're working on a new structure, a new building to house it at the Bill Valley blacksmith site. So that was ambitious to not only move it, but to house it. But now it turns out before they can move it, it needs to be stabilized. The structure, the ribs need to be replaced, or it'll crush as
Collapse.
it moves. Yeah. And so the Historic Society, through Bjorn Tofty, the wood boat builder, are proposing to do that work on site, to effectively bring Bjorn in with his trailer and his tools and his expertise and do that initial stabilization of the ribs and the crib or whatever it takes and the interior on site in the park, which is, I feel, not disruptive and needs to be done. Let's get it done.
When are they thinking of starting, do you know?
This season,
But
they need another survey. They've had a few folks already look at it. It's called surveying old boats, where you have an expert go in and bang it around and figure out what's rotten and what isn't rotten. And they did some preliminary surveying last fall. They believe I have one more survey lined up with an expert to really say, here's what we need to fix. So they're still working on the fix, on what exactly the plan is through the surveyor. They would need an additional survey this spring. We're thinking in May or June, once the moisture levels are sort of down to the dry season. They'll be surveyed for the final, order for, to fix it. And so this work would take place this year. We asked the Historic Society to draw up this MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement. It just spells out these terms very roughly where, they want to fix up the boat. We're going to give them a year. They're going to follow all of our rules, be fully insured, that sort of boilerplate business. But here it looks like we have Dwayne and Brian now to take over. Hey guys, I've just been introducing your project.
I appreciate it, yeah. I did not get the email, and Dwayne forwarded it on to me, so I apologize.
Oh, not at all. We're like that. I'm glad you're here, Brian, Tofty, and Dwayne Eggy. We have Bob, Steve, and Matthew.
All right, thank you for your time. Hi,
Take it
maybe
away.
I'll start,
Good
Go ahead,
program
Pat.
last week, Brian.
what was that?
Good program with North House last week.
Oh, thank you, yeah,
That was
that's always
great.
fun to share.
That was great.
Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna try to share my screen here, and,
So,
If you don't
Brian,
know-
can I ask a preliminary question?
oh, for sure.
Are you related to, I think it's Greg Tofty, who's a lawyer in Duluth?
Well, Greg Tofty, my brother, is a contractor in Tofty, but if it's TOFTE or TOFTY, I can guarantee you we're related.
Okay, well, yeah, it's small world. I was in law school with him. And
Oh,
he
okay, yeah, that was
practiced-
probably either Reuben or Casey's son, my cousin then. Yep,
Well, in all events, go ahead with your presentation.
yeah, thank you. I gotta figure out a way here to, stop sharing, I have to find another way to share here.
But we're talking about the Niji here, so he's gonna give a little presentation on it.
Who's that?
Winchester.
Let's see. Maybe if you could let me know if you see the screen.
You just see white right now.
I have to ask Dwayne, can you see the screen? No?
Brian, we just
Can I-
see white.
White, okay. Let me try once again. I don't know. It's not necessary, there's only 3 slides, but I would like to try to get one more time here and see.
No problem.
Hmm. Let's see.
While we're waiting, it's worthy of note that we did receive a multi-page document from Dave, which
We can-
had, I gather, one of you guys prepared.
We can see it now, Brian.
Oh, thank you very
Photographs
much.
and
Yeah.
Text, okay,
Yeah,
here we
that's a
go.
long document.
Go ahead.
Okay, so basically what we wanted to explain was how we got to where we are and what we would hope to ask of you for help. So it really started this summer when Dwayne actually worked hard to set up an area by the Bolly Blacksmith Shop to move the Niji to do the restoration work. And then we hired Larry Ronning, who's an old friend, and the Ronning families had in Knife River and Castle Danger has had, boat building experience since 1908. When his uncle, great uncle, built the Dagmar, part of that mosquito fleet we talked about the other night. But we wanted Larry because of his experience with the big, large tugs, the fishing tugs like the Crusader II and the Edna G and the Leif Erikson. It required a boat builder with that type of experience to come and do a survey of the boat before we moved it. So we asked Larry to come up. It was late summer. He did an initial survey, and his findings immediately were he would not recommend moving the boat at this time, although he feels it's really, the hull and other aspects of the boat are in really good shape. He just recommended holding off until we could find an area that, that was more, why move it is what he said. Why, unless the park board, disagreed, why move it right now? So then we hired Bjorn, my nephew, Bjorn Tofty, who has boat building experience, going back to, he went to a boat building school. And with Larry's overseeing the project, the two of them started to look at it a little closer and kind of started to determine the work that would need to be done. And that kind of leads us into that we wrote this short, one-page memorandum asking for a little bit of time, in its current location, to do a further assessment, and then some stabilization work, at its present location in the harbor there, and before we moved it to another workspace. So in that memorandum or that usage summary, we were hoping that we could ask you to begin with a year to get it stabilized. And then at that time, if we're able to stabilize it, we would then, move it to another work location, probably back to that Volley blacksmith shop area that Dwayne had worked to stage. We talked to Dave about, would that be real disruptive, for the tourists, in the park? And I think we all agreed that it wouldn't be, and it would probably be, somewhat exciting for people to see that type of work being done on a fish tug, The only issue is that if after that year we aren't able to determine that we could still move it, we might have to come back to you at that time and ask for an amendment to the agreement. It might take longer than a year. We don't think so, because the hull again is in good shape and all that. And then lastly, the insurance, the Cook County Historical Society and any person acting on our behalf would be adequately insured, to remove any risk to you as a group. It's really that straightforward. We just thought we'd present it in this way and ask if you have any questions.
The only question that occurred to me was that, and I think you're right, that it would be an attraction for people to watch, but that probably means we need to put some kind of barriers up around it so they don't get in your way and they don't injure themselves and that sort of thing.
Exactly, yep. And Bjorn would prefer that as well. We spoke to Dave a little bit about that. Part of the flip side of that is that, people will come and ask a lot of questions and Bjorn won't be able to get his work done. So, but there's a happy medium there. But yes, we agree that needs to be in place. Some kind of barrier, so that people won't get hurt, because, it's inevitable that people still want to walk up and see what's done and look at the.
Would it be useful to have some kind of a sign next to the project that would explain the frequently asked questions to give Bjorn more freedom?
That's a good idea. Absolutely. Yep. And we'd be absolutely willing to do that. Yep. That's a very good idea. Yep. Just make it clear, state that it's under restoration and please, for the time being, keep off this portion of the property and view from afar or something. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe you could have a little box with some of the descriptions like we got that people could read and take away.
Yeah. We hope to create a brochure, kind of again, the flip side of that would be, we hope to, this will encourage people to donate, to the restoration work, and included in that then maybe would be what you just mentioned. I think that's a good idea.
Based on the presentation, I'm personally inclined to approve your request. Are there questions or input from other members of the board?
Conversation with the craftsman is a great outreach opportunity. So that should be encouraged rather than discouraged. Then you just figure 50% more time than you planned.
Or have a second person there who knows something
it's
about
a
it.
great outreach thing. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's the deal?
Yeah.
Much better than, reading a plaque.
I suppose you could have 45 minutes out of every hour devoted to work and 15 minutes for public contact too.
Yeah. Or a video running alongside,
There you go.
and then that could run continuously, and then if you had more questions, you could tap the workman.
Is that something that interests you fellas?
Oh, for sure. That would be beneficial for sure.
And you could roll a fundraiser into your video.
Yeah, we've got enough history and enough photographs now to build something like that for sure. Yes.
So how many people would be working on it at once? More than just Bjorn?
That's a good question. No, actually, that's a good point. There's already been interest in local people to want to participate in that restoration. When Bjorn helped on that fishing skiff that was rebuilt, or I guess it was at the North House, people participated there. So they do want to, but again, that kind of comes back to the insurance side of it. You know, what's possible and what's not possible. But it would be primarily Bjorn, and then Larry would just come periodically to provide advice to Bjorn. But yeah, it would be a relatively slow, tedious process of replacing the planks and, you know, but that's interesting because people do want to participate, and I guess we should probably think about that, you know, and how that would affect this agreement, you know, if at all, you know, if they. Dwayne, I think that's something we should take back.
And the sign that you put up probably will say something about where they can send money?
I guess we haven't thought through it that far. I like that idea of the brochure, that they walk away with something that, to donate to the restoration. But yeah, maybe. And I think those are things that we should continue to, if you agree, then we should continue to work on what those things might, you know, be, what's beneficial to the Harbor Board and what's beneficial to the Cook County Historical Society. You know, at this point, we're just hopeful that you'd consider allowing us to work in that space, you know. But I think it should be a continual conversation for sure.
Are there any other?
I was just saying, Dave, is there any issues with traffic or people milling around that area, or is it pretty wide open there?
It's, you know, it's a very popular spot. It's at the marina on the water, so there's a lot of traffic. It's a lot of space too, so there's not a lot of, it's not a pinch point, it's not a congestion. We talked about the scale of their tools and footprint. It doesn't seem to be an issue. It sounds like maybe like a work trailer, like a utility trailer with Bjorn's tools. There's power at the site, so there's no extension cords running over roads or any kind of trip hazards. And I feel like they'll do a great job of, you know, site safety, isolating, doing a barrier. Obviously, it's very busy July and August. You know, perhaps there's some opportunities for May, June, September, October, where if you're really in there doing something and you don't want to be as busy.
Yeah.
So there's a real kind of ebb and flow to the season. But, no, it seems to be just fine. It's such a busy park, it's not going to create an additional layer of busyness. And the idea that, you know, they would respect quiet hours, they're not going to be working with power tools after 10 p.m. and disrupting the guests.
How close is the nearest bathroom?
2 minutes or less.
Okay, walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, that's a good point. I think at periodic times we should review, you know, how the tourists feel about it, or if any complaints, and kind of adjust things, like you say, Dave, from the time we begin sawing, or, you know, because a lot of it can be, you know, staged, you know.
Yeah, and
So,
something we
but-
joked about was what we've just been through with the highway construction and the
Yeah.
boat launch construction. And there'll be continued boat launch construction this summer with paving in the parking lot and heavy equipment operating right down there at the end of the road. So in the scale of disruptive construction, this thing is very small compared to what we've been through.
Right.
And more interesting, yeah.
Much more.
More interesting, yeah.
So I have no issues.
I suppose, assuming we approve this memorandum of agreement, that part of your sign will say some thanks to the Park and Rec Board for its cooperation in permitting us to work here.
Absolutely, yep. No, it's a complete partnership for sure. No, and, you know, greatly appreciated. Yeah, that's for sure, yep.
Yeah, and I'll just second that we've always been strong partners with the Historic Society. This is a really good exhibit they put on down there. Like I say, the recreated fish house and the Niji together create just a wonderful piece of history right on the harbor. that I know are just, you know, the guests love, the non-guests enjoy. The society's been always working with us on our future plans. If you look at our master plan, it shows these pieces moved.
And when they're done, we can have an event at which we tour
Yes.
it, right? And
Yes.
WTIP comes and Brian comes and
Yes.
maybe
But
even
this-
the TV from Duluth.
So the
Oh, for
idea
sure,
of this, you know, the idea of this being stabilized and then moved fits with our master planning and our need to, you know, if and when the marina improvements were to come into that corner, these pieces would be moved anyway. And so this is just a nice, I think, you know, getting ready for that time, which is nowhere near or nowhere soon, but, you know, someday maybe.
I would hope that they would go in as early as the weather permitted them and the weather conditions permitted, so we get as much done before the July as they want to.
Oh, we want to start as soon as possible, for sure. Yep. Yep. As soon as possible. Yeah, I'd go as far as to say, sitting here listening, that maybe, you know, once or twice in the summer, for the people staying in the park, we have a little, I'd be happy to do a presentation on the history of the Niji or commercial fishing or the harbor and Grand Marais, something special for them, you know, to draw them out of the park and into a story, you know. I'd be happy to do, and you know, that would be focused on the park, not necessarily the historical society, you know. You've allowed us to do this, and we want to share the history, anything like that, we'd be more than happy to, you know, participate in. I think it'd be quite fun. I know you'd have one person, Bruce Footer, who would come visit. One of your customers.
But we'd have many.
We joked about that because Bruce is my brother-in-law, and at one time, and he has those carvings, you know, and Dave has to watch them so he doesn't set up a little shop down there.
That's right. Carving there.
But
Yeah.
they'd be fun to do things like that though too, you know, something special for the people staying there. Say, hey, you know, you're invited to a presentation, you know, and it should be about the harbor probably, and the Niji, how that fits into it maybe. But
Well, do any of the other presenters want to say anything before we take a vote?
hey, Dave, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Dwayne?
Okay, and any other board members have any more input or questions? It would be appropriate at this point to have a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement, if people
So
are
moved.
comfortable with that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Bob, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
Are you happy with the language,
I-
Mr. Attorney?
I was happy with the language, with the understanding that things tend to be a bit more informal here than they do in some places. You know, we talked about a lot of detail that they're going to work on, and I don't think we need to have it in the agreement because you all know each other well, and nobody's going to surprise anybody. So with that understanding, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
Is there any objection to the adoption of this memorandum of agreement? Hearing none, by unanimous agreement, the memorandum is approved, and on behalf of the park board, I'll sign as the acting chair, and I suppose you'll sign as the, okay, and you'll take care of that paperwork? Okay. Thank you all for coming and for doing this. I look forward to
thanks.
see the results of your work.
Thank you very much. Yep, it'll be fun.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Thank you,
Just so
Dwayne.
you know.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Dwayne.
Dave,
Yeah, go ahead.
just so you know that, that memorandum, we're gonna add, insurance policy numbers on that before we do any work.
That sounds great, Brian, or Dwayne, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys, have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
So we'll assume that the insurance amounts are adequate or more than adequate as part of our motion that we adopted. If anybody has any questions at all, we'll bring that issue back, but I don't expect that to happen. Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the city council report. Craig, do you have something for us today?
I don't know if I have anything to report that pertains to the rec park. Is there anything I don't remember?
What you guys working on?
I don't know. We're working on all kinds of stuff.
Oh, it's kind of January, you're appointing boards and.
Yeah, we're appointing members to boards.
Oh, we got a new member,
We have a
Matthew
new
Brown.
member. We have a new member on this board, which is nice, and I think we might have a new one going on to the PUC. I think yes, and we're lacking what?
Everybody still,
We're still missing.
library, yeah.
Oh, library board. Yeah, we have a new opening there.
planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning still needs another member because we have 2 city council members on that right now, which we can do, but we would like to have another person at large. So if anybody's listening to the meeting, come on down and, get a taste of serving the community. It's a good thing to do. Other than that, pretty quiet with other stuff, I guess.
I gather the council approved the budget that we submitted last fall.
Yep, all the budgeting, the budget process is finished, so we're moving ahead on then a new year now. That's about all I have, I guess. I don't remember anything else.
Any other thoughts about the city council report? All right, Parks report, we had a handout, a short one that Dave gave us, which we should all take a minute and read, and then you can highlight it to the extent you want to, David.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And we should really kind of time out and back up as I realize Matthew Brown is here for the first time, and I want to give a big thank you to Matthew for stepping up and serving the board, and if you want to say anything.
No, I'm glad to be a part of it, and, I spent a lot of time in the rec park walking my dog, and I love looking at the boats, so I'm all in for it.
Overqualified. No, it's great to
There we
have you,
go.
Matthew. I mean, for those that don't know, Matthew's, I think, captain of 30 years, 40 years?
30.
30?
Yeah, don't go too far.
A captain as in sailing boat
A
captain?
sailboat captain, yeah.
Oh, wow. Do you
Yeah.
still sail?
Very rarely, if at all.
Well, I'm hoping that I get a chance to crew on somebody's boat this summer before I can't do it anymore.
They do.
There you go.
Hey.
The only boat I have has a big hole on the bottom, so you don't want to go with me.
Well, thanks for stepping up, Matthew.
Sure. This is great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, and like Craig mentioned, we still have one opening, and do the bus live in town?
Okay.
But yeah, feel free to read my report. Let me know when you're ready.
And they can join at any time throughout the year? Does it have to be, or do they have to be appointed at a certain time, or?
They would need the appointment of city council, which meets every other Wednesday.
Okay.
So applications are through city hall, and then appointments are through city council.
All of the things being equal, there are now 4 white guys who are the member of the board, so we ought to especially encourage people who might add some diversity to our membership.
Good point.
Okay, looking at the Parks report, let's read it for just a second. You got a copy there? Good, okay.
Yep.
You said, your report says there were something like 400 reservations taken online for August arrival dates just today. How many reservations total for a month like of August might you expect?
Good question.
I don't know, I think we take around 4,000 to 5,000 for a summer.
For the summer, with the July and August being the busiest 2 months?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're June through September now, though.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I bet that's fair to say. We probably have 5,000 total, but for just August, it's probably a couple thousand. Tough to say, but it's interesting that we do, 10% of that in one day. And,
Yeah.
You look at some of this online, just in the first hour was the biggest, the business was starting 8 a.m. by 8:10, I got a dump from the cloud that said, you just made 100 reservations in 10 minutes. And then 20 minutes later, we made another 100, 20 minutes later, another 100. So in that first hour, there's 300 online, which, 5 a minute. So if some folks won, some folks lost. There's always that buffering, whoever
Yeah.
clicks first.
Right.
And sometimes you see it and you click it, but then when you're still entering your info, somebody else is already buying it. And so there was just a few people that didn't get what they thought they were getting because they just got the spinning wheel.
Yeah.
But, as a whole, this new system is very much effective, and this idea of, spreading out the demand month to month. This is the second season we've been doing it, and it's been working.
Do I have it right that during the winter, we just employ you and Samantha?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have 2
And
phone
Aaron.
lines.
Aaron.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Aaron, yeah, we have the facilities manager who works across the street in the shop,
Okay.
is the third full-timer.
When you say across the street at the shop, what are we referring to?
There's a maintenance shop across the street.
In the rec park,
Yep.
across the street from your office?
Below the old
Okay.
swimming, below the old swimming pool
Yeah,
there.
okay.
But yeah, Sam and I are in the main office answering phones and computers, and we have 2 phone lines, and so they rang busy, for the first half of the day, and then by this afternoon, they sort of quieted down. This compared to our previous scheme where we released all dates at once in January 2nd, and we would be crushed with phone calls for a week. And so we really like this new system. But now it's into fixing things, like all day Sam was, looking, there was a little glitch early on, the computer, the online booking machine was strangely creating like 2 sites for the same, the same dates, and not charging the one. I mean, it wasn't a double booking per se, because it was the same person.
I think it was just the book your site's way of slowing it down, and it just to keep it from double booking. It was a placeholder, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Just a minor glitch where about 30-some people had their names twice for the same site
Okay.
twice,
Same date.
same dates, but they only paid once. And so now Sam's going back in and fixing that.
So when they make a reservation, are they putting just a deposit down?
$40 deposit. 10 of that is a non-refundable reservation fee. 30 is refundable if they cancel before 2 weeks of the arrival.
I assume the vendor that runs this reservation system is open to your report of what goes on?
Definitely.
And
Yeah,
you-
we always give them
And you tell
feedback.
them what goes wrong?
That's right, because we pay them $5 per transaction, so that we don't want to pay for these extra transactions. There was 2 years ago where the system really did poorly. They didn't even charge us for January because it was a real problem when it, before we were just. But yeah, we constantly are working with them, and the feedback is flowing that we need more nodes. They added more nodes, which is like how people interact with our database. And some people get in right away and get what they want, others get spun. But it's working. And we're practically booked for August now. First 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks, there's some availability. We're definitely seeing a trend of like 36 plus footers, 40 footers,
Bigger camper.
big rigs. We've sold a lot of those in the last couple of years to what they call the pandemic buyers that, thought, hey, we'll just get away from it all, we'll buy an RV.
Yeah.
And they got sold the 40-foot monster that we're having a hard time fitting, because of course our park was built back in the 70s and 80s when 30 feet was big. And so we filter all our sites, it's quite the process to
Size.
find a site that fits.
Yep.
But it's, based on size and model numbers, and we trust them to put in the right info, but we know some people are gaming that system too, where they have a 40-footer, nothing's available for a 40, so they'll put in 35. And it shows sites.
Show up with the 40.
Yeah, yeah.
Got chainsaw.
Yeah, so it's just what we do. Guest services. But we've gotten good at it. Sam's been very helpful over the years, did a great job today. And like I say, we did have 3 people in line this morning, which was a coincidence almost, but We remember we used to stack up. the
Yeah,
big line in
everybody used to be
January.
out there.
Yeah, that went away. But just happened to have 3 guys this morning that were up ice fishing, and they thought, can we book for the picnic? And sure enough, they got it.
Can you see, has there been any traffic from Canada?
Yes,
About
yes,
40 or so reservations for Canada.
nightlies, and then we've got a few maybe of our seasonals. There's about 10 or so that are Canadian, and we've heard back from most that they're intending to be back, that they're hoping to be back. Maybe just a couple loose ends.
Yeah, we had that issue the last couple of seasons about people who couldn't cross the border to be at their space and what they paid. Are they now able to get here without restriction?
Yes and no, yes, but now I think testing is back into effect to get back into
Right.
Canada. You need to have a negative test within 72 hours. That's been on and off and back on. But the border's open.
It's the Canadian government that's making them get the test to go back.
And are the people from Canada who've had long-term relationships, long-term occupancy in the summer, are they showing up again?
We had one that didn't come, obviously pulled their trailer last year, and then I lost one so far this year. I think everybody else I've talked to is planning on coming back.
Because their trailers
And their trailers are on site.
the trailers are here, yeah.
There's a couple that are not, trailers are not on site, but they have told me they're coming back. Well, there's one still in limbo waiting on the testing stuff, but the ones on site, I maybe spoke out of line, but I told them that it'll probably go, because the border's open, they're back up to the full price.
Tell them to bring their golf clubs and see how wonderful the greens are now.
That's true that if the border's open, it'll benefit the course.
Yeah,
Well, it'll benefit everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
and some of us may go up and play Sailor Hose.
Yeah. So that's the booking update that we're up to right now. We'll, obviously have this month of February to finish up August. But now we turn our attention to seasonal placements. Kind of Sam's specialty here is the monthly seasonal arrangements, the waiting lists. January was the month of deposits from the seasonals. So they don't, it's on a first right of refusal, you could say, that they don't have that, we gotta beat the next person. They tell us, we're coming back, here's $100, and we lock them in. They have the month of January for that. We've just completed that process. There's always stragglers, we've probably heard from 90% of the 90 or so seasonals, but we've got a good dozen that we're gonna track down and figure out their plans. But we're anticipating multiple openings in seasonal sites that will then go to that waiting list and fitment and, calling down that list and selling seasonal sites is what's the priority for February, March. Same in the marina. A very minor turnover in the marina though, compared to RV sites, maybe one slip.
When you refer to seasonal sites, you're talking about sites that people occupy from May to October or whatever?
That's right,
Okay.
that's right. They're in a different inventory, they have a different reservation and deposit process.
And they pay for the whole summer?
Right.
Okay,
Right now, they just pay $100,
right.
but yeah, they pay the summer rate of about $4,000.
Monthly?
It's about $800 a month.
I mean, that's when they pay monthly, or how do they pay?
We said we have easy terms, so we don't have a monthly, you just have to be paid in full by December. Some people sign up for automatic payments, some people pay 3 big chunks, some people pay 1 big chunk.
The majority are paid by October,
Yeah.
so it's all pretty much out. But there's a couple, that do. I have them I can set up a monthly recurring payment for them, and it just charges it.
Any other comments on that section before we move on to the WTIP radio waves discussion?
No, but this is good news, right? I met with Stacy Drouillard from the radio a couple weeks ago, getting the ducks in the row for the return of radio waves. We went over, it's been 2 years. Last time it was in the park was 2019. But the radio continued, the live music up at the station being like broadcast, video, virtual festival was the case for 2020 and 2021. But now we're feeling good about 22. and bringing the festival back to behind the sledding hill, or behind the Sweet Arts Bluff there at the sledding hill. It's the second weekend of September, the 9th, 10th, and 11th. We talked about the usual, setting aside sites back there by the back corner there. We tap into the power at the RV sites. So those have already been closed down so they don't get booked. Parking we accommodate in the ball field lot. We're not sure about the boat launch lot, if that'll be done or not by September. So that's kind of, we'll see, but that's a good overflow spot. Standard stuff, quiet hours, event hours, vendors. But this COVID-19 protocol, certainly the radio's taken seriously. I think as of now, they're kind of planning it like it were to go down soon, so that we need to be more aware of COVID, and masking and vaccinating and all that would play into their event. But the idea is it's fluid, it's September, it's a lot going to change in the next 6 months. And so we'll just continue to work with the radio on what the local and regional recommendations are for that. But I gave Stacy the thumbs up. I said, I don't see any reason why this can't come back. I hope I wasn't jumping the gun on this. I realize this is a special event application that you all need to review and approve. And so I've seen the station now has announced that it's going to be back. But that said, we'll get a special event application from them.
Right.
And do a formal review and approval in March.
The phone keeps ringing.
Yeah.
People want to know.
Oh, I know, our guests are the same way.
Yeah.
But the good news is we've set it aside. Like it's ready to go when we are.
And a lot of them want to book their site, which they'll be able to do next month.
March 1st. Unless they're coming late August and staying 2 weeks,
That'd be great.
And they
I can
can-
tell them to do that.
then they can book now. So yeah, this is pretty exciting. It'll be the 15th anniversary of this, 15th year, and boy, does that make us feel old, because I remember putting the first one together as a one-off thank you to the community, right? We're just doing it 1 year.
Yeah. Just doing it
Because we
1
all
year.
wanted a big party at the end of the season. But we did such a good job with it
Here we are.
that we had to keep coming back. So yeah, look for more on that. We'll get a special event app in front of you guys next month.
I assume we'll have some sort of agreement presented to us at some point?
That's right, the special
Yeah.
event application.
Okay, terrific. I've got it in my calendar.
That's such a great spot. I mean, for so many things.
Yeah.
I love watching the kids slide down the hill this time of year, but then it's just great all around. So
Yeah.
it's going to be great to go back in there.
Are there any other questions or comments about park operations before we go to the next item on the agenda, which would be the presentation of the Community Connection project? There being none, let's bring up the guy.
Well, unfortunately, CJ's not online.
He's what?
He's not with us. We see on the screen, no CJ.
Captain.
Is he going to be with us?
That's what we had planned. Patrick sent him 2 emails. But,
Well, I looked at all the paperwork, and I think I understand it, but a lot of the detail is too small to see in this format. And, but it looks like he's given us 2 choices. If you look on about the 4th page, there are 2 different stairway connections that are slightly different, if I understand it correctly, but I don't know how they're different, except the part that's crosshatched in the right-hand one is much smaller than on the left-hand one. I guess the pages aren't numbered, are they? No. But it talks about the grading plan at the bottom. That's the one I'm looking at. It shows the proposed stairway, looks like.
well, I can give a little background on all this, because I've been working with CJ last month on, getting this in front of us, just as I think a cursory review, right? If we recall where we left this in October on the conceptual plan, the pretty full color, what it'll look like when it's finished, right, is the last thing we saw, right? And we're looking at the idea of George Morrison totem luminary, the panels we discussed, the stained glass, or what would be acrylic, I believe we're looking at plastic, that would be, we took it off the roof. If you remember, we didn't like the idea of bird
Right.
droppings and maintenance.
Getting it dirty.
So that's really where we're at tonight, is the idea that we took the suggestions and the review from September and October, have this latest concept, which hasn't changed at all, except for the roof pieces don't contain those colored panels. But what is new, what is very new, is this set of plans, which, as you say, is very much engineering and fine printy. And because it is a 60% complete construction set. So for bidding is what we're working on right now. CJ's working on a 90% complete set that would be available for bids in a month or two. And so we're just checking it at the 60% to say, are we good? And yes, I'm good, I understand it, because I've been in it, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. But it's just that sort of standard planning where we need to work through the concept was said, yes, we like that, now turn it into construction documents. Here they are, 60% complete. It's got a lot of profiles and grading and details for engineers, but for our purposes, it's just a, yes, keep on working, is all we really need to tell CJ.
Looking at the page 2 of the handout, it looks like the work that's being proposed is set in this area that includes those 2 trees and the junction between the state trail and the trail that goes down into the rec park. I've circled the area that appears to be the area of construction.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a busy corner. It intersects with the right-of-way, with the MnDOT right-of-way that has the new improved 10-foot wide bike trail sidewalk. That is the northern boundary of this. And then it connects the park, the northeast corner of the park, where there's already that switchback paved trail and the stormwater management pools and the timber frame bridge. This sits right at the top corner of that, in that it's a bit of a slope right now. It's, erosive, and for what we've always visioned in that corner is this idea of a deck, a landing, and steps down to the switchback trail. But yeah, we have a separate process in play now with MnDOT to make sure we get the right permit to build this, to join their right-of-way. The city administrator and MnDOT are working on that. Forget the acronym for it, but it's some kind of a MnDOT, like limited use permit, I believe. It's a LUP, and that is just a piece of formality that, again, the MnDOT folks need these 60% complete plans to know what we intend to do to issue the permit.
If I'm looking at page 3 of the group of things, it's the demo plan, it says at the bottom right, and there's a left-hand side and a right-hand side. Are those alternatives, or are they both going to be done in some way?
I think that's one just shows elevation grading on the left. I think it's the same picture, Steve, but one of them is showing erosion control and staging plan, and the other showing demo plan. Is that
Now
what
I
you're saying?
understand. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah,
Thank you. I got to read the fine print at the bottom.
yeah, lots of it. But I'm very comfortable with these plans, that they're progressing as we've visioned the concept, and they're necessary to get them to that final phase of biddable documents.
Dave, are there any lights, either accent lights or safety lights or maintenance receptacles in the plan?
I don't think so, Bob, but there is a light nearby, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if it's portrayed, but already in place, I believe, out on that corner is a pedestrian scaled light.
Yeah, I wonder if either accent lights or safety lights would be a reasonable thing to plug in at this point. It wouldn't cost a lot, and it might make it look really nice at night, when otherwise it's dark, as the bridge below it is. And this is a nice chance to have a lit accent at the edge of the city. If that wouldn't cost too much.
It doesn't have to be super bright. It can
No.
be more along the sidewalk so
Even,
people
even a
don't trip.
couple of vertical lights outlining some of the beams, just to provide light in the public space, and then a plug, of course, for maintenance.
And that'll reduce our liability exposure dramatically.
Yeah. For that bird washer, you want to have at least one
That's a good
plug.
idea.
I don't recall
Good point.
seeing power, or I don't think he mentioned power. But
It's
accent
near.
lights would be really cool.
It's nearby, but yeah, that's a good point, Bob. I'll bring that up with CJ.
If you think about how effective the lights on the Yortis are, just strung up at Christmas, defining the boat.
Yeah.
You come in town, that's what you see. This would be, you come in town, and this is what you see.
And we do dress the little timber bridge with Christmas lights as well.
Yeah,
Now you mentioned Christmas lights. That little corner has,
that
in the
tree is
past, we
great.
put, yeah, we put lights on the
Yeah.
trees there.
That's right.
Having a discreetly hidden outlet
Yeah.
for equipment that you're gonna
Yeah.
use to clean the project
Yeah.
is probably not a dumb idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You love those 200-foot extension cord deals.
Yeah.
yeah. Good,
Or for plugging in your wheelchair and all that stuff.
good.
Just good to have access. I don't think that's terribly expensive.
Not with power nearby.
No,
Good points. I'll bring them up with
Yeah.
CJ.
yeah, thanks. And how are we doing budget-wise?
Well, that's unknown because we haven't got prices, so that's the next step. That's what we'll know by hopefully April, May.
Because Frankie and I were the free spenders, and Frankie's not here. But somebody has to defend the free spender position, and I would like to stake out that
You're on.
way out in left field.
We still keep the budget in mind, you know, we were going off of CJ's numbers that he
Yeah.
felt were pretty reliable,
Yeah.
that we're in that upper $200,000 range.
Yeah,
And so we said, we're good with 250 coming out of park capital funds. And then we have a separate grant for $50,000
yeah.
that hopefully covers the difference.
Who's CJ?
CJ Fernandez, our
Oh,
landscape
right,
architect.
not CJ at the radio station.
No,
No,
It's a different one.
landscape architect, been working on these
Yeah,
plans.
okay.
We saw him in September, October, I can't remember, I think it was October.
Yeah. But if you're gonna drop $250,000 on this, and you have one chance to do it, don't get stingy, do it right, make it dramatic, and let people just bitch and then they'll forget about it.
So what's the time frame if this keeps going along, like they approve this and things like that in April, May, then what?
We've always set this out as ambitious that we build it this year.
Oh, wow.
You know, that we get a bid in May at the latest, and that's the construction season's underway, and that we get it completed by November.
Is it too late to find somebody to do that? I mean, because it's, you know,
Hope
everyone
not.
plans ahead and
We only know once we release the
Right.
documents for bidding.
then you'll find out. Yeah.
But, we do know that there's a big contractor right down the road doing a
Right.
concrete and pavement project, and a lot of times there's some synergy there.
So there's some fair chance that
Yeah.
he might be interested, or they might be interested in doing this
Right.
little project in addition.
Exactly.
Saving money because they don't have to move all their stuff up there twice.
Nice. CJ just joined us.
Oh, good.
It's all right.
Hello, CJ Fernandez.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, CJ, good. I think I might have stepped on your toes here. I got into this without you.
Okay, no problem. I apologize for being late. I've been on the phone trying to figure out what's wrong with our internet, so
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
hopefully I won't cut out here. If I do, I'll try calling back, or
No, you're
I don't know
sounding
if there's a
good.
mobile way to do it, but
You're looking good. So yeah, it
Great.
just kind of brought us all back to up to speed, back to where we were in October with the conceptual plans, how they really haven't changed. You've taken off the paneling off the roof, but otherwise we're full steam ahead with the 60% document.
yeah, I don't know if you want me just to give kind of a high-level overview.
Sure.
Yeah,
Going on a few things. I'm going to try and share my screen here. Let's see. Can you see that?
yep,
Okay, so I'd say just a couple things that we're looking at as we move it forward is you'll notice that there's a couple new cut panels in the glue lamps. And so one of the things we're still looking at right now is structurally, are these systems actually going to help us keep the glue lamp supported? And the way we had left things with having these cut panels being out of the project or kind of a separate bid, we're just looking at how some additional steel components you may not have noticed here could get implemented in between glue lamps to prevent racking and to give this whole thing enough stability. They're pretty light, minor details, if that makes sense, but there's just some ongoing things that we'll be figuring out as we dive into 90%. I think the only other real change is where there's a slightly different connection detail to the footings below. Everything's been a little bit simplified below grade structurally, and so that's, you'll see too, there's some minor differences to account for drainage across the slab of concrete, where we're a little bit higher here, a little bit lower here on these sides, but for the most part, it's very close to what we looked at before. Right now, the glue lamps are a little bit larger than we had shown before. This is in this dimension here. So we're up about another 1 3/4 of width to give the extra strength for this span across the top. And all those things are a little bit in flux as we continue to just look at how the steel layers into this structure. And then I would say the one other thing, and I'll bring up the 60% documents, is you'll notice just like these, the whole footing system is simplified a lot. And one of the questions we have right now for structural is to evaluate whether or not the stairs is going to require a footing or not, or whether we can do this essentially as, an 8-inch slab, which is the thickness of the concrete underneath the steps. And that just minimizes the amount of material cost, excavation that we have to make on site. And so it's really just cost mitigation items. And so it would essentially be this stair section right here without the sidewalls, and a little bit deeper on the top and a little bit deeper on the front, but that floats similar to the way you would do a slab of concrete, if that makes sense, just non-footed, to be eliminating these two elements right here. Entirely a cost management thing. We could still leave the curbs on the sides, so aesthetically there'd be zero difference between what we have there in the imagery versus the differences in.
Question about footing, CJ.
Yeah.
I remember from my law practice years ago that we had to put in 4-foot frost footings down in the cities for a building, for a retaining wall.
Yep.
That's about as much as I know about footings. It occurs to me we may have less of a footing problem because of so much granite underneath we're here, or am I way off base there?
No, we've got, we do not expect to hit rock underneath this, so we don't, we're going to be full depth at 60 inches. So we're a little bit deeper on footing depths than you would be here in the cities per se. So we'll be a minimum 60 inches down. So this is what that section's looking like. These other footings essentially are, if I blow it up a little bit. So this is just a cross section cut. And so the depth of the footing is actually down quite a ways. And you can pull the depths of the footings out from these grades. This is finished grade up here, and how the footings step as the finished grade steps away. So that's where we are with the footings right now.
Do you have, or will you have a model of what's going to be built for people to look at while you're building it?
Yeah, if things continue, with minimal revision, we'll have, sorry, let me bring it up again here. This model is really close to what's going to be built, with the exception of the kiosk in front, which is still out of the project. And as we finalize the design, we can update this model so it's extremely close dimensionally and finishes wise. One thing I will note is that the granite patterning here is of the style and type of granite patterning that would be on these clad walls. That option is not available in a hatch pattern from CAD, so it looks a little more ashlar. And so it's really just a hatch pattern placeholder, if that makes sense. So, but this is very, very, very close to what the finished product's gonna look like.
CJ, something that has come up is lighting, the idea of ambient lighting or safety lighting on the steps. Is there any provisions for lighting in this?
There's no lighting in this project. There's lighting nearby from like what's the road project, but there's minimal to no lighting. Minimal ambient lighting, and there's no lighting with this project.
Would it be possible to put in either some horizontal or some accent light to light the space and make it both more safe but also more attractive from the road?
Yes, it's possible. Absolutely. I think it's really just cost, and that's about it. So, it's something we could address or investigate a little bit. Beyond that, I think on delivery of that, like I don't have an electrical engineer on board to do the work, so I'd have to kind of reach out. LHB is partnering on this, and electrical work was done through Bolton Menk as part of their team. So I should be able to access kind of what has been done and what's available for making connection, and or look at other connection. I'd say the other update that I have is I circled back with Dan Shaw from LHB as well. He was the one that did all the reach out communications on utilities. There is a power line that runs kind of right in this area below grade. And so the communication with the power provider, and it being a city-owned power line, the intention was to move it out of the way of the footings, or essentially pull it back in the excavation. And so if we're doing that work, we would be exposed to electrical there. And I'd have to check in as to what kind of other facility we need there, from a junction box, or I don't know if it needs to be metered, all those kinds of questions. Electrical stuff gets just a little bit out of my lane, but it's something I can follow up on.
In addition to lighting, CJ, the question of maybe having an outlet somewhere nearby for power tools that were going to be cleaning the place at some point.
That would be possible as well.
It would be a good idea to address that question when you come back,
Okay.
and the lighting.
I wasn't thinking to floodlight the whole 100 yards, but a little accent light for attraction and for safety, and just to highlight it, I think would be really nice. I'm aware there's a fiscal note tied to that, but that's my job here, is to push that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would suggest is let me follow up with one of the electrical engineers, and then get a handle on what it takes. And then Dave, if it's all right, I could communicate through you just where we're at, what the options would be, and I could identify some kind of lighting types that would seem to be appropriate for this spot.
You bet, CJ, and yeah, we can work together on this. I know in that corner, recently we put in a new 320 cabinet for some RV power that's just across the pavement, just across the stormwater, the upper, where the culvert is from the MnDOT.
So you're probably down in here someplace.
Exactly, yeah, just where it says Grand Marais Campground,
Yep,
we've got power.
perfect. that makes it even easier.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is just what we're connecting to versus starting with a wire, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The other question that occurs to me is an operational one. Is it going to be open in the winter? Is it going to be open for people to walk down those stairs in the winter? If so, who's going to shovel it? All those sorts of things.
It's a good question, Steve. We've been kind of trying to keep up on just keeping the bridge snow blowed out. Aaron, our facilities manager, is our guy for winter maintenance. He's active with the snow plow on the park roads, but he does get in the snow blower and blow out the little trail across the bridge up to the new bike trail. It was just in there last week. And so we could certainly keep it, if it's not snowing every day, I think we can keep it shoveled.
Okay, and then the issue of lights would become an even bigger issue because it gets dark so early up here.
Yeah. Well, or we could dress it with Christmas lights like the bridge.
Yeah.
One other thing I could suggest, which would be an easy thing to add in, is if you would ever see the need, we could provide a steel kind of eye bolt or grommet on the edge of the railing, or even mounted epoxied onto the stone. And you could run a chain with a small sign on it. We've done that a lot with campus projects where they just want to shut down the stairs for a while. And they consider that kind of effectively barricaded and signed. And it could be at the bottom as well. At the bottom part of the railing, we could add on something that's a super simple thing to bring in. If you want me to do that, we'll just include it.
I would, let's, I would, because then, we still have
Could be added later.
the switchback trails, this shoveled route, the snow blowing route. This thing would be best off not active in the winter.
I think his point about putting the grommets in to the sides of the wall, probably sensible in case we ever want to block it off.
Yeah,
We want it to be easy.
yeah. Yeah, why don't you work those in, CJ?
Yep, that's no problem.
Thanks.
Anything else you want to tell us, CJ?
Yeah, one other thing that we're still looking at, and you'll notice in the plan here, if I get to it. So, construction access is, it's not easy here, so we're difficult. We're in part working off the road and/or in part working through the campground. Limited space. Right now, we've got kind of a sort of a one in, one out approach. And part of us moving forward, there's a couple different prongs to this. One is just continuing on the maintenance agreement with MnDOT. I have a few calls in to civil engineers, and I do not have any updates on where that process is at, and I haven't heard anything from Mike. But the idea that we would provide construction staging and access could occur kind of in parking lane or temporary use of this roadside area for deliveries. And another thing I was curious about is if we'd be able to come in through the campground here. So there's obviously impacts to users, operations, a campground, but there's not a lot of space here to get into the site. And there'd be obviously some remediation and things. There's a campsite here, as you know, but I just wanted to introduce that's something we'll have to figure out here, but when we get from 60 to 90 as to how this wants to stage itself.
Yeah, so the stage, the box in the bottom is an active campsite. It's a seasonal campsite even. It's, they live there all summer type of site, so it'd be difficult to displace. We could certainly take over that pocket park, to the east of that where the Grand Marais campground is represented. I know there's trees in there though, and depending on the impacts, we don't want to undo what we've already, we've been growing those trees 10 years now. They're looking pretty good. A good space, an available space is above that to the west, where the old bike trail is. That's kind of no man's land right now. Like, yes, just above it, there's a fence. There's like a cedar
Yep.
board and batten fence right now. And on the north side of that is where the old bike trail ran. It's an 8-foot wide trail with lots of green space on either side. And it's effectively available.
Would,
You know,
do
we
think?
we could remove sections of that fence so that we're, you know, getting up into that area just to the east of that campsite,
Yep.
or
And,
coming down on it from above.
yeah, so I mean, to get into this area, we could potentially come in this way or just come down the trail? Is that
Yeah.
the thought?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can come in from the west by the Bathhouse 1,
Yep,
or just right off of 61 even.
okay.
But
We'll
yeah,
continue to look at that, and there'll be some area, you know, that gets ripped up pretty good throughout construction and will get restored at completion. You know, blanketed and seeded and kind of brought back to normal. So that's kind of typical construction stuff, but there's just, the room here is real limited, so.
oh, and then there's all that space on the east there where that folk school is. We have it just set up there. They got a nice big parking lot.
You do.
Yeah,
Well, if
And,
they're part of the community that's being connected, they should be glad to let part of their
That's right.
parking lot be
Yeah.
used for
Just
this
move right
project.
in.
I'd be glad to make a phone call if you'd like me to.
We might have to. No, we could certainly keep working on that, CJ.
Yeah, and as we continue to kind of circle the campfire with this, we'll have kind of a number of things that we'll be circling back with you on in the next few weeks, just questions, answers, T's to cross, all that kind of stuff, so. I would imagine the 90% process would be another, 3 or so weeks out. We'll have a check-in point, a lot of questions to get answered, maybe in time with that work, and maybe once we get to that stop point.
CJ, when do you think we'll see the 90% documents?
I think it,
3 weeks.
in a month.
Yeah, we could shoot for the March Park Board meeting. We'll meet the first Thursday.
Yeah.
If they're ready, we can look at them then.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. We could have a full update. We'll be pretty well set by that point. I did have one last thing I wanted to cover in regards to the colored panels on the insets. So we did just remove what was intended to be, plastic or glass kind of lens up there. I do have some thoughts that we could accomplish something similar with a painted perforated metal panel that would get mounted in kind of the pattern that we had shown before. To me, the kind of the tie to the art and the impact of it, I still feel the kind of the translucent is the best, but I understand, sort of maintenance concerns and things with it. But we're just showing it this way for now because it's something that will be sort of readdressing as we move into 90%. So we have a couple different strategies. I think that's about where we left it with the group last time, was we'd keep addressing how that we might be able to bring some of the color representation into this, or keep it in a way that's a little more friendly to maintenance and operation type stuff. So to be continued on that one, but I'll have something more sufficient to look at regarding that next time.
Anybody have anything else to speak to CJ about? You have anything else, CJ, before we go on to the next item?
No, I don't.
We'll see you on the 1st of March then.
First
Thank you very much.
What?
First Tuesday.
That is the first Tuesday, the 1st, isn't it?
Is it? Oh, how about
It's always
that?
March out, or February and March are always the same.
I'm thinking, thank you, CJ.
Thank you. Bye.
The last item on the agenda is a new business item from Stone Harbor. And here comes the paperwork.
Yes, Jack Stone, Stone Harbor Wilderness Annual North Shore Water Festival. Third weekend in July, 15th through the 17th.
We approved something similar to this or identical to this last summer, right?
Yeah, it's been maybe 5 years running. Whatever, it's the weekend of the 15th. Could be the second
That
weekend.
is the third weekend in July.
But it's an annual event. Jack and his wilderness supplies have been, just a light footprint set up down in Harbor Park on the beach. It's for demoing stand-up paddle boards and sea kayaks and yoga and that sort of business wellness, and it's, very low-key. They don't require any additional setups. If the weather's nice, we might put up the big blue tent, the tinsel, fly tent over the park, over Harbor Park. Jack's willing to work with the musicians once, if that program gets back into play. We had that Harbor Park music series that was going on, that we'll work with the musicians on their calendar and be able to share the space. But this is really kind of one of those easy to approve events, because it doesn't put us out. It's a nice draw for the community, and I have no other issues with it. Jack, usually asks for the idea that if the weather's really bad, if there's a strong southwester that's rolling through the harbor, that he could perhaps either move it to the east bay, which we don't have any jurisdiction on, or the rec park campground beach, which, is like inside the harbor, like on the west, it's a bit calmer, over by the picnic pavilion. We have that big space that's, down by the boat launch, but we feel we would be happy to share that as well. In the past, he hasn't come to use that space, but it's the only other note that's up top under park areas requested. He's principally hoping for Harbor Park, the beachfront, and yet if the conditions are, if the weather and wind is such that it's too wavy in the harbor and the beach on this, the Trading Post corner, it's, he would move over to the park, to the campground beach.
Anybody else have any questions before we have a motion? I could gather that this form is essentially identical to the one we approved for last summer.
Yeah, because the date's the same.
I note a couple of things that are there just for, since Matt wasn't here. They gotta have porta
He's
potties
got 22 on mine.
that they provide.
September 9th, 21.
I'm sorry?
Flip it over.
Oh, yeah, good eye.
Oops. Good eye, yeah.
But it's all right. I make a motion to approve this.
There's an insurance requirement and porta
Yep.
potties,
It's all on there.
and he's gonna be doing stand-up paddleboard and kayaking demonstrations somewhere in the harbor, depending on the weather, from what I understand.
That's right.
And there will be music at the pavilion tent at Harbor Park. Those are the main pieces to what I think I saw here.
That's right.
Is there a motion to approve his request? Sure, you can do this.
You already made it.
I made the motion to approve it. It
Is there a
needs
second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No one opposed, 4-0. Is there any other business anybody feels compelled to bring at this late hour? Okay, without objection, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.